The thing that disturbs me and keeps me up at night is the fact that essentially at this point, ascending into management ranks is an experience akin to being sabotaged, right? It's almost a betrayal in some ways.
Welcome to Your Work Friends. I'm Francesca.
And I'm Mel.
We're breaking down work so you get ahead. Mel, you and I talk a lot about the state of the workplace. Actually, every single day we're talking about what's happening with work, what's happening with jobs. And one of the things that we just keep coming back to is what the hell is going on with the manager and the manager role?
We've covered it several times in New Week, New Headlines. First of all, managers are in the sandwich, the classic corporate sandwich between executive leadership and then their employees, and they're getting dumped on every which way. We covered an article several months back talking about this is the crisis year of the manager because we see orgs ripping them out, which we both have expressed as a dumb move.
Dumb.
For
Absolutely
many
dumb.
reasons.
Yeah.
And the other piece there is the younger people don't want the gig because it's a thankless job right now.
Being a manager, it's hard, right?
It's hard.
To your very good point, that's getting attacked from all sides. And we wanted to bring in somebody that hears about what the hell is really going on, real street conversation with the manager. So we brought in David Rice. David is the executive editor of People Managing People, where he's looking at the stories that are happening in the workplace, specifically around management. And he's really trying to get at, with People Managing People, the heart of the issues that are faced not only by HR professionals, but by employees too. So we thought because he's getting this great overview of what's going on in the ether, he can be a very good person to get the very real street, very raw, very honest perspective on what's going on with managers.
Yeah. A lot of insightful conversation. I also, side note, love all of his videos. So if you're not following David on LinkedIn, you should be, and check out his weekly videos.
David is very dry. He is very no bullshit, but he's spot on. So we hope you enjoy this conversation. With that, here's David.
David, it's so good to see you.
All right, David. Again, thanks so much for joining us today. We're super stoked to talk about the state of managers. In our part of the world, Mel and I are hearing from managers. We're reading the news about managers. They're getting it from all sides. We're flattening. We're taking managers out. Apparently, AI is now coming for your job, all this good jazz. It's a crazy time to be a manager. And especially in your role as the executive editor at People Managing People, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What is the world of the manager looking like right now? And I'm curious, what's keeping you up at night as it relates to managers these days?
I think the thing that disturbs me and keeps me up at night is the fact that essentially at this point, ascending into management ranks is an experience akin to being sabotaged. Right? It's almost a betrayal in some ways. If you think about the fact that 82% of managers receive no formal training. So it's just here, go, do this really difficult thing. I'm not going to help you do it. And even the whole way that you were successful, you got into this because you were in theory good at something. So is this how we're going to reward success and high performance? Is here's this new challenge that I'm just not going to help you with, and I don't care. I guess I don't care if you're good at it or not. As somebody who spends a lot of time talking about leadership and how to create success and how to innovate and inspire people to do new things, how can we do that to managers? It's just disturbing, right? It would be like trying to train your pets to go to the bathroom outside but never open the door. You know what I mean? What do you want them to do? I don't understand. So what are we doing? There's a lot in this world that I'm like, what are we doing? But when I think about business, that's the thing that it blows my mind and makes me want to pull my hair out.
Yeah. I mean, to your point is, we're not setting them up for success at all.
Yeah, no.
If there's a development piece, 82% of people aren't even getting trained. Mel and I absolutely know that to be true. Very few organizations are doing that. And even if they are, it's not necessarily that they're developing them the right way, because managing is a very different skill than individual contributor. It's a completely different turn. We know it's one of the hardest roles to step into. If you ask most people in their career ladder, that flip up into manager was way harder than that flip up into executive.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just so different. And I love your analogy of, so we're basically saying, yeah, this is what you need to do, but we're not allowing you to do it, or we're not setting you up for success to do it, i.e. opening the door. Is there anything that gives you hope? Because we absolutely agree on that reality, but is there anything where you're like, but this is interesting?
Yeah, I think the thing that gives me hope is there's a lot of people coming together around common experiences right now, common goals, desires. I think 2025, when we look back on it in a couple of years, will be like a pivotal year for community building. That's my hope. That's one of the things that I really wanted to see from this year, and for changing the way we think about traditional dynamics. So whether that's how we use something like LinkedIn, or how we approach going to a conference or interacting with each other online, which obviously I think could use an overhaul. But I'm seeing a lot of people agree on what they see. Like, we all agree that this is happening to managers, right?
Yeah.
And what we know what we want to change. I think there's not as much difference in philosophy or the spectrum of thought around this there is about a bunch of other issues, right? So I think it's a little different in that we want to build community around this. And that's a skill that we need to learn in and of itself. And so I think it's going to be good for us to come together on that stuff and identify the things that we want. We've all been sold a lot of, I don't know how to say this, bullshit narratives about either management or what it means to be a leader. There's a lot of this like alpha talk, and I have no time for it, but it's one of those things that like pervades the leadership space. I just think it's going to be short-lived, and we're all going to come together and identify some things. The need for managers, maybe we'll get into this as we go, but I don't think that the need for managers is going to disappear, right?
I want to talk about that community piece real quick. Community. Are you seeing community inside organizations, or are you seeing people actually going outside organizations to find that community because it's the only place they're getting it?
I think both. I think it's cool to see community within organizations because people are, we always talk about like peer-to-peer learning, but I think more and more people are realizing like, I can go to this person and get some kind of value, especially around AI, right? I think that people are seeing the things that their coworkers are doing with it, and they're going, whoa, I didn't know you could do that. It teach me how to do that. So they're learning a lot of things from each other, and that in and of itself is building internal community. But I also think with all these layoffs and the things that you see, trust is low. In some ways there's loyalty, but in other ways people are like, whoa, they ain't going to be loyal to me. So why should I be loyal to them? And they want to go out and build their communities outside of it. So they're going to the thing, they're trying to build their networks. They're going to people that they have common visions with and engaging more. We're seeing that activity that even you see in Slack communities, right? There's more and more of that popping up. And there's a lot more groups out there identifying that and going, hey, I think we can like create this community. The facilitation of that is increasing as well. So as there's more options and there's more desire to take advantage of it, it just gets infused into sort of the culture and the way that we all think. Like, I've got to be a part of one of these things so that I can continue to grow, because the organization's not going to help me do it necessarily. I think that is a thing that's coming out now, but I ultimately think that it's a good thing. It's something that we all need to do anyways.
There's this overall sentiment for managers right now that like, I'm on my own. And so I got to figure this out either through community or internally or externally, because my faith that my company is going to be doing it for me or my leader is going to be doing it for me is nil. Am I reading that right? Is that what you're hearing and feeling?
Totally. There's a couple of reasons why too, right? So you have the second level manager, where there's absolutely no help, and who's above you to help you? It's generally like either director, like VPs or executives, who have no time or desire to help you figure out your challenges and problems, right? They're just not going to step in and help you. And so who are you going to turn? Yeah, you have to go to other people that are having a common experience and build some sort of rapport or understanding. You have to find out what tools are you using to understand these problems better. Where are you getting your advice from? That kind of thing. And like, that's one of the things that we see, partially because we seek to be the thing that you would go to.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
So naturally, when we are successful, we find that people are gaining value from what we're doing. That is part of what's driving it, is like amongst managers. And then you see like the flattening of organizations, right? They're firing managers left and right. So I don't even think they care if I succeed or not. And if I don't, they'll just use it as a reason to cut my salary from the books and I guess get AI to do it.
Yeah. Which is funny. The Deloitte Human Capital Trends just came out, which a lot of times is thought of as one of the key indicators for where human performance, human capital consulting is going, right? In all these organizations. And they just were like, psych, you shouldn't be taking out this manager layer. And I'm like, and we were all like, no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah.
Let's not. Yeah. So
Go figure.
Yeah. Really? Having 67 direct reports as a VP didn't work? I'm shocked.
Yeah. It's painful.
We just covered a few weeks back that like Gen Z has no interest in even moving into the management role. And there's obviously a much better way that people can be preparing people to be in this role. Ideally, from the time you step in the door as a junior level employee, you're gaining this training before you even make it to that step, right? So it isn't this big surprise or big shift. You cover so many different organizations, so you see excellent use cases and really bad use cases. Like, what do you see being done really well?
It's tough to say, because I'd probably say so-and-so is doing it right now, and then 2 weeks from now, they flatten half the thing.
Yeah.
It's tough to say who's getting it right and who's getting it wrong. If you're looking at it like, okay, how can we get this person to manage differently, and you're actually giving them tools to do that, then you're doing it right. One thing I've always said is, from the pandemic time, nobody ever adjusted what they were doing to manage differently, right? We went to remote. They didn't know how to do that. That's part of the reasons why. There's a lot of reasons why they want to force people back into offices that are not great. But one of them is they never learned how to do this any other way. Still doing things by the idea of butts and seats. And then you realize, the increase in things like employee monitoring software. And we talk about that all the time because it's one of the things we do reviews on our website. But you see the increase in that and you're like, is that healthy? Is that any better than just looking at butts and seats? No, it's not a gauge of productivity. They got these like mouse jigglers and all these weird gadgets you can buy to fake productivity if that's how you're going to measure productivity. And so the ones that are doing it right, I think, are like, look, you got to shift to like measuring output reasonably, measuring outcomes responsibly. Those are like two of the key things. Don't get lost on a goal. You create this really big inflated expectation and think that's reasonable or responsible. It's not. It's about figuring out, okay, what does productivity actually look like? Meaningful productivity, not just like completing tasks or creating a huge volume of work. Because you can create a huge volume of work, but if it all sucks, what's the difference? It's not going to move the needle. We've got all these traditional quotas and traditional ways of thinking about things like productivity, things like business impact. We've got to get away from it being so role specific, it being quota specific, I would say, in a lot of cases. A lot of it is like volume of what people are doing rather than the velocity or the value of what they're doing. So the ones that are thinking ahead and trying to change, that are doing it right.
Yeah. Thinking about more meaningful impact than just like checking the box. And we hear it all the time. Francesca and I get people reaching out to us. They're feeling the squeeze at the top from the executives that they're reporting up to, or they're a manager, their senior manager who's getting it from the executive, right? And then they're also dealing with the emotions of their own team and the things that they're experiencing in the day to day. So they're just, what's that song? Stuck in the middle with you. They're just really all stuck in this kind of hellish landscape of the middle, being pulled in a million directions, but also not feeling cared for in either way. If someone's in that space right now, what advice do you have for them if they're in the squeeze?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because we're in this period where like executive demands are just so out of touch with the experience and the reality of the lives people are living. They could use this moment to gain trust, and instead they've used it to put in RTO orders and talk about 60-hour work weeks. Right? A lot of what we're seeing, especially when they start yapping in the media, just erodes people's image of what leadership is, right? So if you're in that space, I think the thing that you got to do is basically do whatever you can to increase transparency about what's going on in the org, what's going on with roles. And I know transparency is one of those words that gets overused to the point that it means something different to everybody, but just try to be real with people about what's happening. Respect them as adults, okay? What's going on with their roles? What skills do they need? Just be human about it. Be real. Everybody's terrified that a layoff is coming all the time now.
Yeah.
They're responding to what they see out in the world. And what they want to see is you being a human being with them. They can't trust you more than the AI if you feel like some soulless corporate suit, right? They might as well just listen to the all-knowing robot overlord that's going to own their future. That's why Gen Z wants to go to the AI instead of their manager.
Yeah.
So you've got to find a way to establish like good faith. You've got an employee population right now that has no faith in leadership. And then if you don't do this right, you end up looking like a shill for people who are out there saying all these things in the media, or people who are just maybe not understanding the basics of their existence, essentially. And it damages your ability to establish a relationship or trust with them. So.
Why do you think people don't do this? Mel and I, in our research, we talk a lot about like the boss-employee-boss relationship, because it is a relationship. Curious about, why don't you think managers show up as a human? What's going on there?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One is the manager is expected to deliver certain things from the business, certain outcomes. And so it gets a little bit like, it's not like they have any shortage of meetings and work to do themselves, right? So they're already bogged down and they've got a lot of pressure from the business to deliver results. On top of that, you're talking about a couple of generations that have been, I would say, systematically weaponized against each other by media narratives, right? Everything is Gen Z this. But for a long time, it was millennials and their damn avocado toast, right? And so everything's just, oh, this group is awful. And what you end up with is like a group of people, they kind of look at each other weird to begin with. And then you've got really big shifts that happen because of technology, right? Like millennials and Gen Z, they don't like phone calls. They don't even want to go to meetings. They're just like, yeah, we're talking about somebody on the phone. Is it like, just text me? Or couldn't this meeting have been an email? How many times have you heard that? But it's an old-fashioned way to get together, talk about it, just settle it. And so you're not communicating to people how they want to be communicated to in a lot of cases. You're not understanding their culture, essentially, because there's age differences or different ways of doing things that you grew up with, because when you grew up, that didn't exist. Like when I entered the workforce, Slack wasn't a thing. It just didn't exist. We did everything by email. But you combine all that together and you've got a place where people just don't understand each other, I feel like. And managers, if they are typically a little bit more advanced in their career, they probably, right now, you're probably talking about somebody in their mid 30s to late 40s, let's say. A 24-year-old, those experiences are wildly different, right? And their expectations are wildly different. You interpret things at work differently. And now they're being polarized by everything. Oh, I don't understand them and their pronouns and this and that. Like it's constantly one thing after another to highlight our differences, never our commonalities. We never talk about the things that we experience the same way. We never talk about the things that affect us in the same way. So that's why there is no trust. For managers, it's going to have to be a conscious effort on your part to sit down, make a lot of eye contact. Really, you know what I mean? Not an awkward amount, but be present. Be present with somebody. Be in the room with them. See them as a person. Learn about things like energy and body language and personal dynamics. What it is that might be sitting between you and somebody that you're finding it difficult to connect with. Those are the things, like, as a manager, this job is going to become less and less about technical skills, I'm convinced, because a lot of all the technical stuff, you'll just be able to do it with AI.
Yeah.
The thing that's going to differentiate you as a manager is your ability to connect to another human being and to see within them what it is you can do to help them achieve that. But it's not easy to do. And it's inherently awkward for groups that are different like that, I would say.
Easy, but it's simple. This is
Yeah.
the thing. It's
Yeah.
It
actually
doesn't actually require too much technical thought. You know what I mean?
doesn't. And it's so funny because to your point about like commonalities, right? So there's way more that we have in common. Humans really don't need a lot. They really don't.
There seems to be a huge missed opportunity. We've reported on like the silver tsunami that's coming in 2030 and all of the knowledge that we should be learning. But is there a huge missed opportunity happening right now for organizations to have more intergenerational like connections and community building to help bridge that gap and have that conversation, especially as we're going through these major transitions? Is that a space where companies should really be focusing?
I would say yes. Here's the challenge, though. We're basically like conditioned to distrust each other, right? So like older folks, they don't want to trust Gen Z because they're entitled or lazy or whatever the other stereotypes they peddle about them. And you've got like the okay boomer side to it where it's just, oh, here they go. And we spend all this time thinking about our differences. There's not a lot of motivation to go, okay, maybe he doesn't get this AI thing, but he was in the workforce when the internet came about, and that must have been a huge shift. What lessons did he learn from that? They're not motivated to ask that question because inherently you'd have to be interested in them or see their value, see their humanity. And everything that we do is meant to polarize and tear us apart. But it's hard to like create something totally different within the walls of your organization when the broader culture is constantly peppering people with this narrative of difference. It makes it difficult for us to learn from each other unless there's some other connector. We did a thing at work. We were just messing around with Sora when it came out. And my team and I, we were like, you know, what if we did this with it? I said, well, have it make me the Pope. And then it did. And I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. That looks ridiculous. Now make it make all of you my cardinals. So it did that and it was ridiculous. And then we were like, okay, now give all the cardinals blowout hairstyles. And the images were so funny. We were all laughing so hard. And I can't remember the last time we all laughed this hard together. But it was lovely. It was like we had a great bonding moment out of it that I ended up making this video. But I thought to myself, like, you could use that though. If you, in terms of management, you can use that to create all kinds of experiences, to change people's narratives about each other. If you got somebody from Gen Z guiding somebody from Gen X or a baby boomer through that experience, and they're joking around and working through it together to make the funniest, goofiest, stupidest thing they can make, well, all of a sudden in that moment, you are just like two human beings having a good time. And that should be okay at work. And it might help us learn from each other and figure out, okay, I don't agree with them on everything, but maybe Tom over there, maybe he has an idea about how this could work. That's what we need. We need that institutional knowledge to transfer somehow. And it can't just be through like SOPs and internal documentation, right? Like it's going to
have conversation.
Yeah, it has to be. That's the only way. And that's really the only way people are going to remember it or actually apply it.
We talked a little bit about organizations are ripping out the middle. And now we also see there's definitely, whoa, let's not do that. And there's just a turmoil across the board. What does all of this mean for someone who maybe has invested years of their life so far just to reach the manager level, and now they've made it and this is the year they're experiencing? What does this all mean for them? What advice would you give to someone who's in that place?
It's difficult, right? Like you spent 10 years trying to climb the ladder, and then now the ladder's been abandoned and about to fall over with you on it, right?
Yeah. It's like the top rungs are gone, the bottom that you were on are gone, and now you're just hanging on.
You're like, the whole thing rotted out from under me.
Yeah.
But it does mean that you're going to have to be as flexible as you can when it comes to things like upskilling, showing your skills differently, finding ways to play the game in a different way, showcasing your impact essentially on any project or whatever it is that you're working on. If I was looking to ascend in an organization, I'm looking really hard at how I can showcase my outcomes and basically build narratives about how I've been a driving force behind whatever it is we were trying to do and how I integrate tech into my skill set. So you want to be really flexible around that. I work in an editorial space, right? We are, I would say, in general, curmudgeonly bunch anyways. Like editors are not lighthearted and high-spirited people most of the time. There's always a lot of resistance to anything.
You guys don't have like a fun committee? There's no fun committee?
The fun committee is occasionally get together, have a few drinks, and have a big bitch session. You're constantly trying to understand things in a different way or look at it in a different way. And a lot of this AI stuff does make you go, oh, what is this? Oh, God. But one of the things that's been tough for everybody is that essentially the job as it was 5 years ago doesn't exist anymore. The term editor is actually starting to mean something different. And you got to be comfortable with that. You got to be prepared to integrate tech into it, however you're going to do it. And this is not just our roles. This is across the spectrum of roles within the workforce, whether it's marketing or you're doing coding. The things that you thought were going to be central or core to your work aren't necessarily that anymore. And you're going to have to figure out how you're going to be flexible and adaptable and learn to use this stuff to do it better, quicker, in different ways than you've ever done it before.
Francesca, I think I used to say this to you a long time ago, where I was like, everyone needs to start to tap into their inner Madonna, who has reinvented herself like a million times over the last 40 years. Got to tap into that, right?
Yeah.
Reinvention.
Yeah. And don't be attached to your title. Be attached to things that matter. Your salary matters.
Yeah.
It's how you pay your bills. Your title is not how you pay your bills. It could be, I've always said, you can call me the head schmuck in charge. I don't care. Call me whatever you want. Just this is what I want to make. And this is what I want my benefits package to look like. And those concrete things that make my life possible. That's what I'm after. You can call me whatever you want. I don't care.
And don't let work define your self-worth.
You shouldn't even really connect it to your worth at all, like at all. One of the things that we did recently was we did a survey about the TV show Severance. We did a survey asking, would you get the procedure?
What is Severance about for those that don't know?
So essentially, Severance is a dystopian workplace drama in which this company called Lumen Industries, I think it is, has created a way so that you can sever your personality between work and your private life. So when you're at work, you don't remember anything about your private life. And when you're in your private life, you don't remember anything about work. It's called your innie and your outie, right? And so you live these two completely separate lives, not knowing, and you just know that you have to go like here at this time kind of thing. So I asked people, would you do it? I had been asked by a UK journalist in response to a UK survey that found that 12% of the UK population would do it. So I was like, let's see if we can find out a little bit more about the US and Canada. So we did our own version of it. And for us, 20% say either definitely or they probably would.
20%?
Wow.
20%. Here's the really disturbing part, though. We asked people, what would be the amount of money that you would need to consider it? And almost 70% gave a price. Only 30%, I wouldn't do it for any amount of money. Almost 70% had an amount in which they were like, yeah, I'll do it for that. I was like, oh man, what does that say about us though? Like where we're at with work or like how we're connected to it. Like people aren't seeing value between what they learn at work and applying it into their life. Every experience I've had informs who I am as a person. And that includes what happened at work, not just the stuff that was outside of it. But I think other people aren't maybe seeing the connection or aren't seeing the value of the connection. And that's a little disturbing and sad, quite frankly.
Yeah. Let's extrapolate that to the US population, that 20% of the population has a dollar amount figure that they would go for to sever their work mind. It's actually almost a benefit.
Yeah. To cause yourself a traumatic brain injury. That's essentially what it is, if you think about it.
Yeah, it begs a really interesting question around what's the biggest thing that needs to change? If you could change one thing that would make the role of a manager more palatable right now, or at least not want to have to sever, not want to have some sort of autonomy, basically, what would need to change?
This isn't just a workplace thing. This is how we all serve. And I'm not to get too political here, but too much of our lives is now dedicated to serving capitalism, essentially. That's really what it is. This idea that like labor unions are bad was the beginning of the end for reasonable behavior about work. And you think about the way Europe constructs work and what their expectations are for people. It's pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
But in the United States, your life is work. Your value to the society is tied to whether or not you have a job and what you do within that job, how much money you make, how much you consume. All of our lives is essentially in some service to capitalism when you really break it down. And that would have to change culturally in order for this to get totally better. Because what people are really trying to block out when they answer that question is the way in which they serve it. And they'd almost rather just not remember it than have to deal with all the demands of it and trying to make it match their personal values, because that's hard. A lot of organizations really don't. How often are you going to find a job that matches your personal values if you, I don't know, care about the planet? Or it's hard. It's
hard.
Culturally, we just have to shift away from your purpose is to serve the machine. And I don't know if that's going to happen. So
I think these Gen Z kids are going to do it.
I have a lot of faith in them. I do.
I
I have
totally
a
do.
lot. They've had a real I'm not going to put up with this shit kind of attitude. And I'm like, good for you guys. You know?
I believe the children are our future. Yeah.
We'll see how Alpha does when they get there.
We do this thing called Rapid Round, where we'll ask you a question. You can respond yes, no, or elaborate if you feel so. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, ask anybody I work with. I'm super long-winded all the time, so I'm always going to elaborate.
Let's do that. This is where the juice comes, so we love it. So it's 2030. What's work going to look like?
Well, haven't you heard? We're all going to be wandering around trying to figure out what our purpose is in life. At least you listen to Bill Gates, right? I do think it'll be very mechanical, like in all respects. Like robots will be in the workplace. They've made it to AGI, white collar jobs. I don't know if they'll exist or not. There's this cool thing going around. It's called like AI2027.com. And somebody ran like a simulation based on all current events and everything. And it was very, I don't know if to say enlightening or disturbing, but it was interesting. Let's just put it that way. I don't know. Will white collar jobs exist in 5 years? Maybe, but this goes all the way up to the CEO, right? Because strategy is a skill. Like it'll do that better. It'll do decision making better, supposedly.
Yeah.
Creative tasks, you go right down the list. And they may even do some of the blue collar stuff too, better too. I was saying to somebody recently, that old saying, plumbers rule the world.
They do.
I don't know. They do. And I don't know if it'll do plumbing as well. So maybe plumbing is the thing to get into.
Listen, as someone who lives in an old house in New England, I don't know if AI is going to be able to navigate it like Joe.
Yeah, no, because Joe has just been rigging that thing for years.
He's been in every janky house. He knows how to navigate around here. It's so interesting you say that as you respond. I just read an article today about Shopify's CEO who is asking everyone to justify hiring for humans and to showcase what they consider to use AI first before they put in human bodies. We're already starting to see that conversation.
I read that same memo.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to something a little more fun, a little more personal. What music are you listening to right now? What's hyping you up?
It's spring and I'm going through this like reliving of my college music listening, and I'm listening to a lot of like early to mid 2000s indie hip hop at the moment. I don't know.
Indie hip hop.
Yeah.
What do you consider indie hip hop?
Oh God, Jedi mind tricks and like stuff that was like not on the radio at the time. So it was like we used to call it underground. Now they just labeled it indie, like same thing as they do with rock music.
What are you reading or listening to right now?
I started this book called The Fourth Turning by William Strauss and Neil Howe. It's about American history. They present it as like seasons. It's like 80 to 100 year cycles. And it presents the idea that we are currently in a historical winter, which is a very difficult time. And spring will eventually come. But it breaks down the last 100 years as like examples of these seasons. And I can't speak too much about it. I've only just started it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the patterns and maybe what to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now I'm curious, did you get to the part, where are we in winter? Are we? Because it feels like we're like Minnesota, January.
I think we're all just to that point where it's like the post-Christmas depression.
Like, I got bills and I'm
holiday hangover.
You're just like, I don't know, at least the football playoffs are on. I could just eat chicken wings whenever I want.
Who do you really admire?
Former Liverpool FC manager Jurgen Klopp is one of my favorite people in the world. I look up to him a great deal, not just because I'm a big supporter of the football club itself, but because he's an incredible example of what a leader could be. And he's just an example of how to transform culture, and honestly, just a lovely human being.
Okay. What's a piece of advice you wish everyone knew?
I was once given a really valuable piece of advice that I think is great for leaders and really anyone working with other human beings to remember. And it's that you can't expect something you've learned through experience to be common sense for somebody else. And it's just one of those things like you think, why wouldn't they do that? So you didn't know how to do that always. Like eventually you learn that because you broke the thing or you made the mistake. And so don't expect anybody else to just know that because you think it's a thing that you're supposed to know.
All right, David, so awesome to talk with you today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, it's awesome.
Not at all. Not at all. And hey, how can our listeners best connect with you?
Of course, you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'm easy enough to find on there. Be sure to check out the People Managing People podcast. I'm the host on there. If you come over to peoplemanagingpeople.com, you can get signed up for the newsletter. And I'm always sending on a regular basis, a couple times a week, different messages from us. And then come to one of our events. That's what I really recommend. Our next one is dedicated to RTO mandates. It's on April 24th. But yeah, give me a follow and don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, David.
Here.
Thank you.
This episode was produced, edited, and all things by us, myself, Mel Plett, and Francesca Ranieri. Our music is by Pink Zebra. And if you loved this conversation and you want to contribute your thoughts with us, please do. You can visit us at yourworkfriends.com, but you can also join us over on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn community page, and we have the TikToks and Instagrams. So please join us in the socials. And if you like this and you've benefited from this episode and you think someone else can benefit from this episode, please rate and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. That helps keep us going.
Take care, friends.
Right. Bye, friends.
Bye, friend.